of a brand new episode of Dive Cuts, and we are live on YouTube for YouTube subscribers, Rock and Plus subscribers, and watch us through the forums on Riverside. It is season 9 already, and we're here to talk about your Missouri basketball Tigers. I am your host, Sam Snelling. If you're watching us on YouTube, you see me on your left. Please take a moment to hit the like and subscribe buttons below if you haven't already. And with me, as always, Mr. Matthew J. Harris, looking dapper as always.
That's I'm wearing a Nike sweatshirt here on a Monday night in Indianapolis. We're in the home stretch. I'm sure players are feeling tired in February. We're feeling tired in February. There's like 5 weeks until Selection Sunday. It's the dog days. Judges are issuing contrary orders in the state of Alabama. It's all kinds of fun right now as we wind down the stretch of conference play.
So we have not podcasted in a couple weeks, so we're gonna lightly touch on the events from, I guess, we talk about Missouri getting blown out against Alabama, which didn't surprise me all that much.
No.
I guess we'll wait to find out whether or not that game will actually count, considering Alabama just running out G League players. And now that that's been, I guess, stopped, is the only real way to say it. Charles Bediako has been declared ineligible, or at least a judge refused his stay. The legalese part of it, whatever. He's not allowed to play anymore. I don't know that would have made a big difference in the game. That Missouri played at Alabama, but they did recover. They beat Mississippi State. They had a week off, and then they looked as really almost as good as they've looked all year, and playing a really kind of a crisp, 32 minutes-ish of basketball, and beating South Carolina. I did sort of feel in watching like the South Carolina game that there reached a point where South Carolina was basically just like, yeah, we're gonna punt this one. And it was, I think, right about like 5 or 6 minutes to go, maybe 7.
Yeah.
There's only so many times like you can watch a 3-point attempt like clank off the rim before like you just start feeling deflated.
Yeah.
And especially coming off 4 or 5 losses in a row, like.
Yeah, we're reaching the days where I think in the preview I put, when does a team give up the ghost? I think teams don't quit, but I think the reality of situations starts to dawn on teams about what their reality is. And if you are South Carolina, you're going into that game and you've lost 4 in a row. I'm going to pull up the schedule now. You are 2-8. The only way back to a winning record is, a 7-1 finish. That's probably unlikely for you with the remaining schedule. And, I think the one thing that had sort of been tough for South Carolina is, and I think for a lot of teams that we've seen this year is, and that we talked about even in the preseason, was you're just seeing as the season's gone along for a lot of these teams how narrow the options get when their depth starts to run shallow. Like South Carolina didn't have Norton Capich, didn't have Chris Sandoko for very much time, and didn't have Jordan Butler. So they were getting killed on the glass. And normally in like November they would have said, we've got 2 7-footers on the bench. We'll throw one of them in there to try and help us. They didn't have that on Saturday, and they got murdered on the glass. They would have presumably, maybe want to try and go and look somewhere else for bench help for shooting threes. They don't have that. So you just start to run out of options. Missouri, I think, opened the door for them in the first half. Missouri has about 8 to 10 minutes a game where they crack the door open and, see if another team wants to walk back into the game. South Carolina did, but as soon as Missouri cleaned up the ball handling and the possession math kind of equalized, it was about what you would have expected from this game. And so, yeah, but about the 4-minute mark, South Carolina had already, I think, cut the lead down to like 8 or 9 a couple of times, hadn't gotten past it. Missouri stretched it back, and it was just, that was it. They were done. So I think that's sort of the period where you're in now, where if you're Missouri, that game, doesn't help your NCAA tournament resume, but Missouri did the boring thing of protecting its resume on Saturday. Like, that's what I think they've done for the last couple of weeks, bar the trip to Tuscaloosa, is not always pretty, not always, clean, but they've avoided losses to Oklahoma, which is now, I think, 2-9 at the bottom of the league. They've avoided a bad loss to Mississippi State at home, despite, 2 periods in that game where they kind of got a little bit rickety. And then they went on the road and they, mostly played 30, 32 minutes of good basketball. And that's not something the committee's going to give you credit for, but they certainly will dock you if you lose those games. Those will show up on your resume, and those are things that hurt you, and Missouri doesn't have any margin for error. So South Carolina's like a team that was close to giving it up. Missouri did what they needed to do and, closed it out and moved on. So now it's a bigger week for Missouri, but I think it was just nice to see them come out of a bye week, put a team down that looked like it was stumbling, to the end of the year, and handle its business. So that's, I don't know how much more depth we really need to get into the South Carolina game at this point.
Well, yeah, I mean, so like one of the things about the, like the committee and the resume stuff, like I really don't think, the committee's going to look at Missouri's resume and be like, oh, well, like they lost big in this game and that game. I think basically what they do is, they for the most part they throw out quad 4 results. Unless there's like some severe marks in quad 4, the committee's not really looking at what you did in quad 4. And so they're going to take the results of, quads 1 through 3, and they're going to, put those up against other teams, that are maybe vying for those bids. The net stuff, look, it's good that Missouri's going to play better basketball and improve their net ranking. It's good, their Ken Pom and Evan Mia and all their analytic rankings go up when when a game is listed as a toss-up and you win by 19. Those are all good things, but none of that really impacts your resume. And they will look at road wins. They will look at how you perform on the road. They will look at how you perform in neutral, away from home. And so for Missouri to go on the road, get a good win, South Carolina, they're not good, but they're often pretty tough to beat at home.
Yeah. They're feisty there.
Yeah, I mean they did have their doors blown off by the Gators, but outside of that, like OT loss to LSU, 5-point loss to Georgia. The Vanderbilt game was kind of close throughout, and they beat Oklahoma pretty soundly. So, that it is one of these things, like they are the bottom of the league. You should get that win. And one of the things I was kind of really trying to point out, and I think it was, you'll have to forgive me, I wrote 2 columns on this, if you can believe it. But in one of those, I was basically saying that the bottom of the league is not like it used to be. And you could in the old SEC and face a team that was in the 200s or the low 100s. And you're looking at quad 4 results within your own league, and that just doesn't exist anymore. Like if you're on the road, it's quad 2. Yeah. And at least quad 2. So I think if you're looking at it from that perspective, there are no bad wins in league play anymore.
No.
And so for Missouri to kind of secure what is and I agree with you, like it doesn't boost the resume, but it does preserve it, and I think I think that's important for them to be doing at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think you look at it, they're 11-0 in quads 3 and 4, and when you get into bubble territory, the thing about it is, like, we can look at, and Watkins does a good job explaining this, like, you can pretty much look at result-based metrics and net as a good guide if you aren't on the bubble. It's a pretty good rubric for seeing kind of what the seed list is going to look like. But once you get into where Missouri is, the committee gets really weird. Like they take longer looks at team sheets, and they don't always apply the same criteria to those discussions. They will, kind of have 3 separate discussions about teams around the cut line. So if you're Missouri, what this means is you've got to try and avoid as many things that somebody in the room can say, well, what about this? If you are undefeated in quads 3 and 4, there's no one that can, sit around and go, well, they scheduled like crap, which they did in non-con, and then they took some quad 3 losses. If you're mostly handled that, you're good. I think Lucas Harkin's a guy who I really enjoy reading his kind of bracketology stuff, has made this point too. Missouri is back up close to around 500 in quads 1 and 2. That's important. You cannot be one of those teams sitting around the cut line with 16, 17, 18, 20 chances at quad 1 and 2 wins and just have an abysmal record. Teams that get in usually are pretty close.
Unless your athletic
AD
director
is
running the committee.
Unless your AD is on the committee. Get on that, Laird. Fix that. But point is, they're around 500 in quads 1 and 2. And really what Missouri needs is they need more quality wins. They need to avoid stubbing their toe, which they did on Saturday, and they need more quality wins. They have a shot at one of those on Wednesday with a trip to Texas A&M. But then they go back into protect your resume mode on Saturday and kind of an elimination game on the bubble with Texas. So that's really where we are right now is, they did what they needed to do against South Carolina. They did help their predictive metrics a little bit, which kind of matter, but the results-based metrics tend to matter more. They're still at 62 in net and 56 in KPI, which hurts. They're closer to like cut line territory and strength of record and wins above bubble. But they can fix some of that this week. And that's really what I think this week is. To me, people will look at the games coming after this one and they'll look at, net rankings, or they'll look at, KenPom rankings, and they'll say, well, those games seem more important. To me, this is a really important week because it's just about staying on pace at this point. It's really about, if you go 1-1 this week, you're on pace. 0-2 this week, suddenly those opportunities at the back end of the schedule look really, really daunting because you have to make up ground. So that's where I think Missouri's at right now. They got their last probably easy win of the season, and now it's really about knuckling down and staying on pace and doing what they need to do. And we'll see if they can pull it off. But I think that they're at a really crucial juncture this week that may get underplayed a little bit just because the names and the net rankings are a little bit lower, but I think it's a vital week for them. Every week is vital, but I think this one's sneaky important for them as they move, towards March.
Yeah, so Texas A&M, they have an identity, which has carried them and treated them pretty well. But they also it's one of these things. They're a tough team to kind of pin down. They shot really poorly against Florida. Some of that is Florida.
Yeah.
In fact, I think a lot of that is Florida. You can't necessarily replicate it. It's the same thing with like Missouri and South Carolina. Like, South Carolina is going to make three pointers. They're probably not going to beat very many teams. For Texas A&M, they shot 26.5%. Against the Gators, and they're a team that they're not very big. If you want to look at a blueprint for how you beat them, I think Florida kind of lays it out. Now, Missouri doesn't necessarily have the exact same personnel that the Gators do, especially on the interior, but beating them up on the glass, making their life hell at the rim, and then you've got to take care of the ball. Something that Missouri struggles with at times. But I do think there is a path to win this game.
I'm less optimistic than you are about this.
Well, so here's the thing: is I do think that Texas A&M does cause some trouble, but they really don't have any size. And the one thing that Missouri does have is size.
But teams that beat A&M do one of two things: they either don't turn the ball over, or they keep the Aggies from firebombing them from the perimeter. Missouri, 1, does not value the ball. 2, what do they do defensively? They are willing to give up threes to seal off the paint and protect the rim. So just structurally, Missouri's in a bad spot right from the jump. and they want to play at a slower tempo, which if you're getting firebombed from the perimeter, A&M can set its press, and now you're burning 10 to 12 seconds to get into your offense, and that's not where Missouri operates very well. So I just think structurally they needed what Florida got in a 26% shooting performance from A&M from deep.
Yeah,
That's what I think they're going to need. Ultimately, Missouri's not going to be able to change its defense in 3 days. They're going to need some variance from A&M, or they're going to have their best ball handling performance of the season. Full stop. Because
yeah.
A&M's going to live with
If
you.
A&M is hitting their season average of threes at
They're
home,
done.
they're going to be really tough to beat, like for anybody. Um, that like the Gators, like the start of that game is what caused the end result. Like A&M couldn't make a thing from the floor. Like this was not some like wild offensive tear by Florida. Uh, A&M scored 3 points in the first 12 minutes.
I think even if A&M had been making more shots, it was still a bad matchup for them with Florida because Florida, one, has big enough guards to, one, see over the top of the press. They do a good job scoring against the press, and they got on the back end of it. I think the problem that Missouri's got is, one, it's not good at times against the press. The ball handling's not big enough and not good enough. So can Missouri exploit those opportunities on the back end of the press that Florida can with its bigs and even with its bigger guards? Like even with Condon or with Hauk, can they get to the rim consistently on the back end of the press? That requires navigating the press. We saw Missouri flabbergasted at times against a basic 2-2-1. So can you beat the press to get to the back end? Two, if you look at A&M throughout the entire year, even before from the start of the jump, they have been cool with getting killed on the glass. They're absolutely fine getting murdered on the glass because they're going to try and force turnovers. So that's just baked into it. So I'd look at this game and Bucky's going to say, okay, we give up. We get murdered on the glass, fine. Missouri turns it over 20% of the time against us. That's not going to be an issue. And they're going to overload the floor to keep us out of the paint. Well, we don't want to play in the paint. We're just going to kick it opposite to Ruben Dominguez and let him fire away. Like I think that's Missouri's going to have to adapt itself to these conditions because the way Missouri sets up, A&M is going to be fine with that for 40 minutes. So the question is, where does Missouri want to make its adaptations? Does it want to, be a little bit more willing to extend its defense, or is it going to have to, figure out how to maybe try and play a little bit faster and attack the press? And that might come with some dead ball turnovers. But I think Missouri's got to find a way to get the feedback loop stopped somehow.
Yeah.
And that's really their issue because stylistically they're not set up to do it. And the other thing is A&M's got more depth than Missouri does. They have more balanced depth up and down their lineup than Missouri does. So I think that's the other thing that concerns me is even if you slow down Rashawn Agee, even if like you put a big body on Agee, there's still 3 or 4 other guys in that lineup that are balanced in terms of usage and performance that can go score for them. So I think that's just the thing that I think Bucky's done a really good job of is he found guys that maybe aren't elite players. Like Agee's been really good for them in conference play. But he found 6, 7, 8 guys that can be consistent every night for him. They know how they play. They stick to it. They execute that system. And they make you adjust to them. And I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing for Missouri going into this game. So because they're basically the inverse Alabama to me.
And by inverse, you mean like
they play faster. Alabama wants to come back and sit in a packed line and kind of.
Oh, you just mean like defensively?
Defensively, they're the inverse of Alabama.
Okay.
Both teams want to fire away, but defensively they take the opposite approach. But that's a bad matchup for Missouri because it tilts possession math, and Missouri's not set up this year to easily flip that back to itself.
Yeah, I don't worry about the matchup, I guess, as much because I'm still not convinced. Like Texas A&M is as good as they've like played at times. For me, the main thing is if you can do your damnedest to slow down Dominguez, who's going to extend the floor, and if he has an open shot, he's going to
He's
take
going
it.
to take it.
And he's good. He's really
He's
good
very,
from
very
beyond the
good.
arc. I think like the rest of the lineup, Pop Isaacs has some scoring ability. Griffin is capable of making shots. I just think that like I feel like you can be physical defensively with them, and you can really stunt their offense. And if you can find a way to take away like some clean looks from three, then I think they're going to struggle to score. And I mean, their size is going to cause them to have some issues at the rim. It doesn't necessarily mean I think like Missouri is going to march down there and do what they did to South Carolina. But I do think that there are avenues where you can
Yeah.
exploit the way that they play and tilt it back in your favor.
The cutoff, I think, when you look at is can you average 1 point per possession? Like when you do that, A&M is 5-6, and they've only held I think two teams, LSU and Georgia, under that all year. So really, the question is, can you score enough to keep out of a death spiral, and can you do enough? Either you don't have to do both. Teams that have blown A&M out have done both, but can you do one or two things? Can you score 1 point per possession to at least stay level, and can you avoid either turnovers or getting firebombed? If you can score 1 point per possession and avoid one of those two outcomes, then I think you've got a puncher's chance. Now we haven't seen Missouri do that at times, but I think that's gonna be
Well,
the for
but
them
even,
for
even
them.
even like the language of like puncher's chance, like I don't think stands up. Like this isn't, we're
I just
not
think it's a
talking
bad
about the
matchup.
UNLV running Rebels.
No, but I'm
Like
saying like I think that they get into a situation where the possession math gets on them, and it happened against Kansas, it happened against Illinois, and it happened against Alabama. When they get into situations where they are playing teams that are banking on possession math and tilting it, they wind up on tilt. That's what's happened this year. I'm not making A&M out to be a death machine. I'm saying it's a really bad matchup, I think, for them. Can they go in and get a point per possession, and can they stop throwing the ball away? That's what I think it's going to come down to.
yeah,
Can they?
I think we're just disagreeing a little bit uh, on maybe the quality of the Aggies. And again, like it it all depends on which team shows up and which team shoots the ball from outside.
Yeah.
If A&M's hitting 38%, then like you're probably not going to beat them. If they're hitting 30% and you're hitting 32 or 33 from outside, but
Then it's a ball
you're
handling battle at that point.
yeah, and with Missouri's ability to sort of be better around the rim, I think that helps them out. They it's simple. You got to take care of the ball. I think I've always been a big believer, and we'll see if they do this. That you take advantage of teams that press you by attacking the press.
Press.
And I think that Missouri has the athletes and they have the size. If they can see over the top, they can get the ball down the floor. They can go get easy buckets. Like, don't make it harder than it is. And if a team wants to press you, like, get the ball in, get the ball at the floor, and go get a layup. Once you get past a team's initial pressure, like presses fall apart, and that's across the board. And one of the reasons why I think like at some point like you've got to do something other than press defensively, and and why I think like eventually like you know I do think Bucky's a good coach. I think the team that he's built uh, has to kind of play this way, but I think eventually he's gonna have to make some concessions and come up with maybe some more consistent half court defenses.
Yeah. This is the way I'd say it. If I trusted this team more ball handling, I would feel better about it. I worry less about the shooting than I do about the ball handling. That's what I worry more about. Just because if you go and you look at when Missouri's turned the ball over, at least with TO, it's been early clock, backcourt, and press.
Mm-hmm.
Like in the half court, TO's okay-ish, but if you get in early clock situations or when they've got to play a little faster, there's some turnover issues that crop up there. And do you trust Ant coming in right now? Where his headspace is at to attack that press. So I think the question is, do you trust the ball handlers right now? Do you think they're in a good spot? I think they've got it. They may not have a choice. They may just have to attack the press because that, like you said, that's probably the best way to thwart it at this point is to punish them on the back end. I mean, Oklahoma State and UCF did that to them. I mean, they made both those teams made Bucky get out of the press within like 10 minutes. If you can have that success, then I think the game changes. And if you're playing half court, then I like Missouri. But that's kind of the hinge moment for me is how can your ball handlers do against the press? Do they do a good job attacking it? And can you do an adequate enough job running shooters off the line to give your offense a chance? We'll see. But
So probably more important for them is the game against Texas. Still currently pegged by the analytic models as a loss, at least KenPom as a 1 point loss. A little surprised. Man, Texas has won 3 in a row. I guess it helps if you played Oklahoma, South Carolina, and Ole Miss.
yeah, it does.
Two of those at home.
Yeah. I'm pulling up my notes here. Texas is kind of what we thought Texas was going to be, though, right? Like, okay, top 4 or 5. Don't really know about the back end depth. You know, they're going to kind of bum around the cut line, and you know they might pick some teams off, but there are going to be some nights where maybe the depth isn't quite there, and they can't quite get it done. I think that's Texas to me has actually kind of been like every time I've watched them, I go, yeah, this is about the team I expected to see. It's really been comforting to watch Texas because when I looked at them coming out of spring, looked at them coming into preseason, and even through non-con, I was like, yeah, this is about what I thought this team might look like. I think it's going to be interesting to see which team can stress the other team's depth. Both of these teams probably only go 7 deep, maybe. And like if you put Mattis Vocatitis in foul trouble, that things fall apart for them. I'm sure if you put Mark in foul trouble for us, things fall apart really quickly. So I think it's going to be which team can get the other one to blink first and have to go deep into their bench. Because if you do that with both teams, things fall apart pretty quickly if you get too deep into the bench. So it's going to be, worth monitoring to see what Missouri can do there. I think you want to get to Lassina Traore as quickly as possible. I think you want lineups where it's Jordan Pope and Kendall Weaver on the floor together. Tremont Mark's a good perimeter defender. I think they'll probably stick him on Jaden Stone. I don't know who Dalen Swain's going to guard. He'll probably guard Mark. But otherwise, I think it's going to be who can stay in the most favorable matchups for the longest and who can kind of keep their key guys engaged and get the most out of them. And that's going to be what decides this one.
This is definitely a game that I'm happy it's at Mizzou Arena.
Yeah, I'm happy it's at home.
I think Texas is a little better than I thought they were going to be, and I think mainly it comes down to Vocatitis. I did not know what they were going to get from him. Like he was okay at FAU. Came on kind of late and looked better. He is a bit of a foul merchant.
Yep.
He is really good. He's in fact just looked at KenPom. I didn't realize he was 3rd in the country for fouls drawn per 40. 9.1 fouls, and we know that Sean Phillips likes to foul people.
Yeah.
I do wonder if we'll see them
go small,
kind of cover things. Well, I was going to say cover things with a little bit more zone to just sort of protect their back end.
Yeah, zone would be in there as well.
I don't know that Texas is a particularly good shooting team, so I think you could work that to your advantage. But I think you've got to stay out of foul troubles. You've got to avoid fouling Vocatitis. You've got to avoid giving them easy points. Dalen Swain's been a lot better than I thought he was going to be. He's turned into like a legit NBA player.
Yeah.
But I think this is a game that you should expect to win.
You expect home court to be the decider here. I mean, Texas is more balanced offensively than I think we give them credit for. I looked at it up this afternoon. They're second in the SEC for offensive efficiency during league play. So I think they're finding a way to make things work. I think the problem that they have is when they get into their bench lineups, the defense just collapses. It just crumbles. And, I think they can score pretty effectively, but I think the one thing you want to do is get Lucina Traore out there. You want to make them go to Kendall Weaver, and you want to get them into some defensive compromise lineups. Because once once Texas starts giving up, I think north of 100 or 105 points per 100 possessions, they're like 2-9, 3-9. Like if you just get to slightly above average offensive efficiency against them, that it's rough for them. So I think that's Missouri's key here: is can they find a way to get to those kind of second, third option lineups for Sean and punish them, and build an advantage that way. Or is Vocatitis going to do what we just talked about, which is put like 4 fouls on Sean in 15 minutes, and then you're zoning to cover some things up? They're an okay shooting team, so maybe that's fine. But I just think it's going to be fascinating to see which coach can do a better job managing their sub pattern and staying out of some tricky lineups, and can find a way to get their guys into situations that are going to be best for them. So it's probably the most important of the two games. We're going to spend maybe less time talking about it, but it's probably the more consequential of the two of them, because what would this move them? Probably 2 games clear in the standings of Texas, and it would give them the head-to-head tiebreaker, and it would be vital because they're both kind of in the same spot on the bubble. So it's kind of a bubble elimination game and a jockeying for seed position in Nashville, given where they both sit in the standings. So
yeah, Texas is 6-5.
Half game. They're a half game. They're a game back in the loss column,
and they've got a not completely unfavorable schedule. They haven't played Florida yet. That is a home game for them.
Yeah, I was going to say, what's their closing stretch look like?
They do play Arkansas and Texas A&M on the road. So it goes Missouri, then they're home for LSU, at Georgia, home against Florida, at A&M, at Arkansas, and home against Oklahoma.
Yeah, so both these teams need this in the road to 10 wins, because that's rugged. Both of them have kind of rugged back stretches here in the schedule. So Missouri's probably slightly more favorable, I would say, but yeah, for A&M,
if you're Texas, you're probably eyeing Missouri, LSU, Oklahoma. Like you need those, and then you're hoping that maybe you can pick off Florida, Georgia,
maybe. Yeah, I think one of the away game probably you're looking at is Georgia, because Georgia's looking a little wobbly, as we expect from Mike White teams come February. So. But if you're Missouri, but Missouri's in the same boat. Missouri's looking at this going, okay, we need this one. And if you're Missouri, because of the way the schedule breaks, you're probably saying we need this one. We need the 2 road games at State and at Oklahoma. Right. And you got to find a way to pick off one of Vandy, Arky, or Tennessee at home. Yeah, you got to get one of those.
Mizzou has so A&M on the road, then home for Texas, home for Vanderbilt. You're at Arkansas. Arkansas is really good at Bud Walton this year.
Yeah. Really
come home for Tennessee. That's a Tuesday night game. Then you're at Mississippi State, at Oklahoma, and you finish with Arkansas at home. Just knowing Calipari and Arkansas, I don't know that I would want to bank on winning either of those games.
No.
I just think Arkansas is looking really pretty good for the most part. So yeah, you're probably going to have to do Texas,
Vandy, because Vandy's down 2 starters right now.
Yeah, and Vandy, Mississippi State, Oklahoma's I think your path to 10.
Yeah, so it's,
and then if you can beat Tennessee too, because I think you could beat Tennessee if you're at home.
But you got to get
that's a 3-point margin.
Yeah, expected. but both these teams have circled Saturday is. Got to get it for them in their route to 10 and to get off the bubble. So if you hit Texas, you get 2 games clear from in the loss column. You get a tiebreaker in the seeding picture, and you probably knock them off the bubble. In terms of hierarchy. So it's a big one for Missouri, and a matchup that I think is the 49% win probability is accurate to reality. It's going to be a toss-up game. So I'm really, really fascinated to see what they get done there, and if they somehow make me look foolish and they get a win at A&M, even better. But you got to get 1 win this week. That's the imperative. You got to get 1 win. And 2 is great, but 1 is what you have to do. And then you start looking at the home stretch.
If you come out of this week 8-4, you're in a much different position than.
Oh God, you're feeling fantastic.
Yeah. Especially because like that A&M game, is definitely going to be a quad one game. Texas probably does not end up quad one, but picking up a quad one win would be like a big deal for them, and then a chance to get another Q1 win at home against either Tennessee or Vanderbilt in the next like week and a half.
The easiest way to say it is they've got to replace the Georgia loss at home. The Georgia loss, the other two games that they lost on the road at Ole Miss and LSU were frustrating, but to have the LSU game in hand and have that one slip has been sort of the Georgia one. Sorry, pardon me. The Georgia loss at home. If you can replace that with a quad one win over A&M and you're 8-4, and you've got two winnable road games left, you start to breathe a lot easier going into the final couple of weeks here. That's really where Missouri is. They need to replace the Georgia loss somewhere. Had they held on, I think we'd be having a much different conversation. We'd be saying, "Oh, they're 7-3, 17-6." Like they'd probably be one of the last four teams in the field right now. But they've got to find a way to replace that win somewhere. We'll see if they can, but oddly enough, I just looked over A&M today and looked at kind of the breakdown, and I don't like this matchup very much if you can't tell, but who knows? I'll be glad to be wrong if they can go in and they can pull it off.
Hey, you've been wrong before. I've been wrong before. Like it happens. You look at matchups and on paper it doesn't make sense, and sometimes teams on either side, surprise you.
Do funky things.
Yeah, like that's why they play the games, Matt. That's why they don't just do this thing on paper. They actually go out there and play 40 minutes, and sometimes more. So we're gonna wrap this up because I've also got to record a new outro. If you haven't heard, we've switched podcasting networks. And so we're going to be on the Believe network, or we are on the Believe network now. So you're probably hearing different ads if you're listening to this on your regular podcast feed. But yeah, so we're going to be back next week to kind of talk about A&M and Texas, how that went. We'll take a look at Vanderbilt and Arkansas, which is a really tough week
that's
coming
not
up.
Fun.
But hey, like that's why they play the games. So so thanks for everybody for tuning in. We'll be back next week.